So today we're going to talk about becoming a product marketeer and also growing as a product marketeer. So today I'm going to be talking to someone who, who has sort of not only mastered this art, but he is someone who has also gathered advice and is also giving advice in what you can do to be a better product marketeer. Welcome. We have LD on Spill the Marketing Beans today. Thank you, Al, for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
So I would like to start off with, your own journey, Al. I know you started off as a consultant and then you made the switch to product marketing at Salesforce, where you were. Maybe walk us through a little bit about that, because I know every product marketer has, very interesting start to their journey. I'd like to know about yours.
Sure. So I started my career as a management consultant. Coming out of undergrad, I was a marketing and theology major, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to work in business, and consulting seemed like a great opportunity to explore a lot of different industries and functions and types of business problems. I loved working on teams. I loved solving problems, and consulting was a great fit for me. So I spent a few years doing consulting, really working at the intersection of organization transformation and technology. It's really thinking about how do large companies and organizations use technology in new ways, and then help their people adapt to these new technologies and drive new ways of working to use those technologies to better serve their customers. I went and got my MBA and did a few more years kind of in this consulting space. Really, again, time had evolved, and so the technologies had evolved, and so there's still a lot of opportunity really in helping companies thinking about digital transformation and really what that means in their industries and for their customers, and also for their organizations themselves. After a while, I always knew that consulting was something I wanted to try, but there were other things out there that I really wanted to try as well. And I started thinking more just about the things I liked doing about consulting, perhaps the things I wanted to change, as well as some of the other types of opportunities that I was really looking for at this next stage in my career. I knew I wanted to work in tech, and specifically in the enterprise software space. I had done a lot of work with tech companies when I was a consultant, and I also really enjoyed following kind of the SaaS space in general. So I knew from an industry perspective, that's where I wanted to head. Product marketing really came to me because I did an internship in product marketing when I was in business school. But I think what attracted me to it was some of the things that I really enjoyed about being a consultant. First and foremost, you got to be kind of at the nexus of the organization in terms of working with a lot of different stakeholders. I've always been someone who's enjoyed working on teams. I've always loved playing team sports, and being a product marketer, like being a consultant, is incredibly cross-functional. I think the second thing is that it was a blend of creativity and communication. Yeah. You got to do that a lot as a consultant, and certainly you do that a lot as a product marketer. And I think maybe the last thing that really appealed to me was the chance to really be the evangelist for the product. I've always kind of enjoyed these evangelist type roles, just going back to even when I was in high school and college. I was in student government. I was student body president. I was an orientation leader. I was a resident assistant. I always enjoyed kind of being at this liaison, or this evangelist, if you will, at the intersection of a population and an organization. And again, very much that's kind of what you do as a product marketer. So eventually realized not only did I want to work in tech, but I wanted to do product marketing, and was fortunate enough to land an opportunity doing product marketing at Salesforce.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, when I always talk about, think about being a product marketer, it's all about, being an advocate for the product, and you just, hit the nail on the head. We're an evangelist, for what we're selling or representing. So at Salesforce, I know, you've been in a PMM for, a couple of interesting areas, especially in digital transformation as well as customer success. I'd love to understand how product marketing was viewed in Salesforce, because I know it's, categorized in a different way in different organizations. I'd like to know what your experience was like.
Sure. So I had an interesting and unique experience doing product marketing at Salesforce. I spent about 3.5 years, almost 4 years there. No longer work there, but I had a wonderful experience. And I think that, if you want to learn how to be a product marketer, there aren't too many better companies to do it than Salesforce. They have a long history of valuing product marketing within the larger organization and the larger company. And there is a litany of really exceptional product marketers who are there and whose sense have gone on. In today's, I think at this point, we've had product marketers go on to be CMOs of some pretty amazing, fast-growing tech companies, as well as tech companies that have IPO'd. And so I think Salesforce is a really great place to learn how to be a product marketer. So I'll speak specifically to the product marketing that I did. So I was a product marketer for our customer success group, the customer success organization. And if you know anything about the history of customer success, you probably know that Salesforce had a big role in really pioneering customer success back when it first started. And the idea is pretty simple. Customers, they buy software and they expect it to work, and they expect that they're going to get value out of the investments that they make. The big unlock that Salesforce brought to the tech world was, instead of paying for software in big chunks of money up front, you could just pay as you went, or you could pay per month, just like today, where we might pay Apple a couple bucks a month to use an app or to use storage. And if we're ever unsatisfied with what we're getting, we can cancel. And that was the big unlock with software back in the day, because that wasn't a thing. When you traditionally had to buy software, you had to pay all this money up front, millions of dollars. And even if you weren't happy, you were kind of stuck with it. But Salesforce came in and said, you don't have to be that way. You can kind of pay as you go. What that means for the organization is that if you're not delivering value to the customers, if customers are not seeing the value that they signed up for, if they're not able to actually use your product in ways that help them serve their customers, they're going to leave. And so part of the reason why we did product marketing in the customer success organization at Salesforce was to really make sure that customers had the right mix of programs, of resources, of experts, and they were aware of them and they were using them so they could get value out of their Salesforce investments. And so the product marketing that I did really thought about, with all the customers that Salesforce had, how do we make sure that they're aware and that they're getting use out of these programs that we have, whether they're online programs such as an online resource, online events, whether they're the actual customer success programs that we have, or the customer success plans that they have, and actually signing up for them and driving demand as well as usage of those plans. And then certainly also within Salesforce, they have a large professional services organization, and really helping think about how do we make sure the customers who want and have ambitious plans get the right team of experts in there to help them achieve their goals. And so when I was at Salesforce, that was the product marketing that I was focused on.
Nice. So that was what I'm also hearing, is that was that large component of speaking to customers, which is, I suppose, a core of, being a product marketer. When you were a product marketer, what were the effective ways that you discovered to communicate with customers?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I mean, first of all, you got to do it. And it sounds really simple, but a lot of times it gets overlooked, and it's not because people don't know that they have to do it, but I think a lot of times things just get busy, or you go too far down a path where you realize you haven't, and you realize you need to, and it's just easier to keep going versus not. So I think part of it is just making it a priority and starting early. I think the second thing, which every product marketer or every aspiring product marketer has probably already heard before, but it's worth saying, is a sense of empathy in terms of truly understanding who the customer is, what they're going through, how they're experiencing the problem that your product is solving, and how your product can make it better, the specific concerns of the customer or the user that are relevant to you, and being able to understand why those could be true and why that might be impacting them. And then I think the last thing that really makes a difference is really being able to speak in their language. A lot of marketers spend a lot of time trying to get the messaging right and trying to talk in ways that align with the company brand and that are in alignment with what's in the market. And those are important things. But if it actually doesn't mirror the language of the customers and how they talk or how they think about it, I think it's going to be a miss. And so just the ability to be able to talk to customers in the language that they have, I think is a super, super important thing to be able to do as well.
I totally agree. Is there anything specific that, you did to kind of understand that language?
Yeah, well, part of it is experience. So I did a lot of product marketing for professional services. I worked as a consultant for 6 years.
Yeah.
So being able to really legitimately walk in the shoes of the people that were buying our services was something that I had the benefit of because I had worked with those types of people before. And I could draw on that when I had conversations with them, right? And I could give examples or speak in a language that they understood because I truly did understand the problems because I experienced them, right? And so, I mean, for me, that was a big reason why I think when I did do a lot of customer listening and when I did talk to a lot of customers, I was able to build rapport and relationships because they could tell that I was speaking in their language because I knew their language, because I personally had experienced it myself.
Cool. Building rapport and relationships with customers. I know it's something that, we tell ourselves that we need to do more of, but that doesn't happen. But, it's something to definitely think about and keep in mind. Let's move on to a little bit about, being a product marketer and also like progressing. Say for a person who is a product marketer today and want to get into becoming a senior product marketer, what kind of advice would you give Al that they could do to, move forward in their career?
Sure. So certainly it's going to vary based off of your company and how they look at progression and employee development and things, but a couple kind of broad strokes that could be helpful. I think generally speaking, when I think of product marketing and I think of product marketing manager just at that level, in order to advance to the next level, you have to be able to do all the things that a product marketer can do within the context of that company, right? And so having the full kind of stack of product marketing skills as well as experiences, I think, and being able to do that exceptionally well, I think is table stakes, right? And so there will be at some, in some companies, certain skills or experiences are going to be valued more than others. And so you'll need to take that into account. But generally speaking, the baseline for being able to get that first promotion from PMM to senior PMM is to be able to do all those things, to have all those skills and experiences, and to do them exceptionally well. And, I think there are times when if you aren't getting a promotion, it might not be because you are not excellent. It may just be because you haven't done sales enablement yet, and they just need to see you do it before you can get the promotion. So that's one thing, is just having that full stack of skills and experiences and being able to point and demonstrate where you've done those and use those in a way that has led to specific outcomes. I think the big differentiator between a PMM and a senior PMM is at the senior level, you really have to be the person who's driving your scope and your work and scoping out projects on your own. That's not to say you always get help and coaching from your manager, or should. No one can ever do this job by themselves. But a big differentiator between a PMM and a senior PMM, at least to me, is at the senior level, you really take much more ownership over selecting the things that you think are going to move the needle and drive towards outcomes that you want to see, versus at the PMM level, because you have a little bit less experience, because you have less exposure to some of those other things, your manager might take more of an active role, and it's kind of expected that be the case. And so once you get to the senior PMM level, though, you really hopefully are in a place where you can be the one to really, instead of waiting for your manager to tell you what to do, to be able to say, I am going to do this, and I believe this is the highest, best use of my time. It's going to lead to the outcomes that I want to drive. And your manager can certainly chime in and say, yes, go for it, or maybe you should tweak this, but you need to be the one who's taking ownership of that and really, really driving that forward. And then perhaps another thing with that is at that senior level, you just have an extra level of gravitas to build relationships, either with more types of customers or more types of internal stakeholders, whether that's other teams you didn't work with or more senior executives. There's just a little bit more polish that kind of comes with that. And then I think the last thing, and related to just kind of growing your career, one of the things that is a little bit of a misnomer in the workplace, and I think more and more people are waking up to it, is this idea that hard work and exceptional work is enough. And unfortunately, we don't live in a workplace where that is always the case.
Yeah.
How people perceive you and what they think of you means kind of factors into the equation. I personally wish that weren't always the case, but this is the world that we live in. So if you do want to kind of grow your career, and you do also want to be an effective product marketer, part of what you do is you actually have to go and do some product marketing of yourself, right? You have to go and make sure that your stakeholders know what you're doing, know the impact of what you're doing, know the outcomes that you're driving, And so when does come time to answer the question, does this person deserve a promotion? Your cross-functional stakeholders are literally pounding the table to let them know that you should be able to get that promotion or move to the next level or get that next set of responsibilities, whatever it is.
I love that, Al. Not only marketing the product, but just, product marketing yourself. That is so important. If we may talk a little bit about, what kind of core skills do you think a product marketer should have in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that much like some of the other guests you've had on your show, I would agree with a lot of the things that they've already said in terms of storytelling, in terms of being able to communicate effectively, whether that's written or verbally. I would also agree, being able to work cross-functionally, certainly having market knowledge and being able to do customer research. I think all those skills are important. I wouldn't disagree with any of those. I would give a couple meta skills that I think really separate, and I think that sometimes get overlooked. So the first one is context switching.
Okay.
And context switching, it means essentially being able to kind of zoom in and then zoom out. It means, on one hand, being able to get nitty gritty into the details of going line by line of the copy that's going on the website, while also being able to partner with your product manager on developing a business case for the 5-year roadmap of the product. And in any given day, you could go from one meeting to the next. And in both of those examples I gave, it requires slightly different mindset as well as slightly different ways of thinking and working. But that is the life of a product marketer. You can kind of go from one extreme to the next. I think it was one of the cooler parts of the role and one of the reasons why I was attracted to it. But I think that's really, really important. Or just going from one meeting, really getting customer feedback, going to another meeting with your internal sales development reps to go over win-loss of their latest deals, right? And so that's just another kind of example. I think another thing is this idea of extreme empathy. Yeah. And because you do work with so many different stakeholders who have different variations of aspirations, of needs, of challenges, the ability to hold space as well as to put yourself in their shoes and understand how they could think or feel a certain way, I think is really critical. And using that same example again, what your BDR, SDRs who are fresh out of college, what they're thinking and what they're challenged by are going to be very different than what the 45 to 50-year-old VP of IT is challenged by. And so how can you be able to have an ability to relate to both of those and truly understand? I think it really comes from the sense of extreme empathy. I think the third thing I would say is the ability to sort the signal from the noise. There's, I think, this really great kind of push to always have data and information and all these types of things, but not all data information is created equal. And so how can you pull out the things that are most important and then synthesize them in a way that people understand? And then the last thing I would say is facilitation towards a goal. Yeah. In any given thing that a product marketer is working on at any given time, it usually, again, is with a group of people. And sometimes your role is not to have the answer. Sometimes it is. But the role that I think a product marketer should be playing is to be able to facilitate the team towards that goal. And I think that's a really overlooked kind of skill to have. But if you can have it, I think it allows you to be able to really make an impact and drive outcomes in a lot of different situations.
I really like that. And also what stood out to me was the extreme empathy thing. I think that's really important. To what you mentioned before, Al, we talked about, progressing, and then you mentioned, should be able to, define your own scope and then kind of direct, your path with it. And then what I also want to, talk about is, okay, there are things that you can do in the workplace, like the other one that you mentioned was, marketing yourself. But then say the product marketer wanted to, do some development on their professional side or maybe from the educational side. And I know that you founded MBA School where you give advice, especially on, what kind of MBA programs that one can do if they wanted to progress as a product marketer. So from an educational point of view, what kind of advice would you give product marketers to, progress?
Sure. I think that whenever it comes to any type of learning or professional development, the first place to always start is with your own curiosity. Yeah. I think doing that will probably yield the most engagement in terms of really committing to it, which I think will help not only yield to the skills you need in the short term, but I think is going to yield to opportunities that you may not necessarily see right away, but can come about just because you choose to kind of build expertise or build knowledge in something that you're genuinely curious in. So as just a fundamental principle of any type of professional development or personal development, I always think starting with from your curiosity and really exploring that is always kind of a great place to start. I think another kind of component, once you've figured out kind of what your curiosity is just people. A lot of times you may learn on your own, but people are social creatures. And so people learn with other people. And I think a big component of that really is around being able to learn from as well as with your peers.
Yeah.
I went to business school, got an MBA. That's part of the reason why I started an MBA school, my website. But one of the great aspects of being in an MBA program is the ability to be in the classroom, in person or virtually, with all these other really smart people who have diverse experiences, who can enrich the conversation, who you can learn from, and who you can teach other things. And so there's so many collisions of ideas, of knowledge that kind of come out from that really enrich your learning. And so I very much think that while I do think it starts with the individual and following their own curiosity, being able to learn from your peers is a really important component. And that can be, internally within your company, that can be in the industry, talking with other product marketers. That could be talking with other people who have a similar skill set, but that you can apply in different ways. As a tactical example, one of my roles, or one of my responsibilities in my last role, was to focus on sales enablement and working with our SDRs and BDRs. And it was all around teaching and coaching. And so one of the things that I did was I spent some time with my friends who are teachers. And I talked to them about, how do you engage a classroom of middle schoolers? How do you keep their attention? What kinds of assignments do you do to teach the materials? They weren't product marketers. They didn't work in tech, but that fundamental skill of teaching and coaching was something that they knew like the back of their hand. And so for me, spending time with them was really super helpful in terms of my own learning and thinking about how I could apply some of their own lessons to the job that I do. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. And then, I think the last thing is just to be intentional and continuous with it. You don't ever stop learning. And I personally never want to stop learning, but being able to every now and then, after you do a bunch of work, to pick your head up and to think about, what did you just do? What did you just learn? And are there other things out there that you can further learn or reflect upon or engage in, so that you're always kind of continuously learning? The nice thing about being a product marketer is that there is never a shortage of things to get done or projects to take on. And so I think if you're always kind of in this mindset of continuously learning and your antenna for learning is always on, you're going to find some really great opportunities using that growth mindset that can really help you either enjoy the job that you're doing or further your skill set or grow your career.
Well, I love that. Never stop learning. If before we wrap up, Al, if there is one thing that PMMs can start doing maybe from tomorrow in order to be better than what they are now, what would you suggest? What worked for you?
Sure. I think the best thing that a product marketer can do to be better today than they were yesterday is to lean into their human. Part of the challenge in the world that we work in right now is that so much of our work is focused on productivity and outcomes, which it should be. But the work that people do is inherently human. Humans and employees are social creatures. Being a product marketer, you work with a lot of humans. And I think that the more that you can lean into being human around your colleagues, around your teammates, around your customers, I think the better that you're going to make yourself stand out, and you're going to be someone that others rely on and want to work with. Anything you do in product marketing, you're always doing it with other people. And so I think the more you can lean into being human, you're going to make someone that people want to work with and that people want to go to, so that when it comes time where you actually have to do something, you have a coalition of people who are going to go on the journey with you. So I would say lean into your human and what makes you human. And that will be something that can make you a better product marketer today than you were yesterday.
Perfect. That was great. That was so crisp. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Al. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed chatting.